Give yourself a cigar. The smell hits you first, stale tobacco and the dusty perfume of newsprint yellowing with age. The bell over the door doesn't jingle. It gives off a tired, metallic wheeze as you step inside. This is the news depot, and its silence is as thick as its shadows. Old Gus is a man with a face like a crumpled dollar bill and eyes that have seen the inside of every sewer in this city. He hawks the usual lies. The daily papers, the girly mags. But my business is with the real stuff. The kind he keeps in a back section behind the cigarette packs. The truth. Printed on cheap paper. That gets an editor a pink slip and a reporter a one-way trip to the bottom of the river. You came looking for trouble, Jack? Gus rasped, his voice a low rumble. You've come to the right place. But let me give you a free piece of advice, something you can't buy with your 10 spot. He leaned over the counter, his eyes fixed on mine. If you ever meet a dame in dark glasses with a red purse, he whispered, run. Don't walk away. Run. Now get the hell out of here. I went out the door, the metallic wheeze sounding like a final, cynical laugh. A red purse, a femme fatale. The old man's warning was a breadcrumb, and I figured I'd follow it to the end of the line. The case of the red purse. The rain fell in sheets against the diner window. But inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and burnt toast. I was nursing a lukewarm cup, trying to forget about a dead-end lead on the politician's wife. When the bell above the door jingled, a dame in dark glasses. She walked in, a woman in dark glasses, shaking the water from her coat like a stray dog. And clutched in her hand, a loud splash of color against the drab morning, was a red purse. A cold knot tightened in my gut. Old Gus's words from the news depot roared back into my mind like a siren. Now let me warn you, if you ever meet a femme fatale in dark glasses with a red purse, run. Don't walk away. Run. She slid into the booth across from me without a word, her movements a blur. She didn't order. She didn't even sit all the way down. She just slid a small, damp piece of paper across the table. Before I could ask who she was gone, swallowed by the rain and the city's gray morning. A cryptic note. I unfolded the paper. In jagged, hurried letters, a single phrase was scrawled. Remember December. The words hit me like a shot to the stomach, and my mind instantly rewound. December, the coldest month of the year. The month my father died. The year I started running numbers for an old bookie. I was just a kid, and I haven't thought about that in years. But a cold thought hit me. I was still that kid, chasing the ghost of a dead man. The past was bleeding into the present, and I needed to stop it. I knew I wouldn't find the answers in a lukewarm cup of coffee. I had to go back to the beginning, back to where it all started. I had to go all the way back to the desk of Jack Hammer. There's something there, a clue about that old bookie named. What was his name? Desk of Jack Hammer. I found his name in the old journals, right where I knew it had to be. Claude Bronson. The name was a ghost from a past I had tried to bury under a pile of empty whiskey bottles in late nights. The man who had taken me in when my father went to prison. He was the one who taught me the rackets, the one who gave me a name in this town. He also taught me that no good deed ever came without a string attached. Sitting at my desk was a pilgrimage to a younger, more naive version of myself. I ran my hand over the chipped paint of the desk, the worn leather of the blotter, and found my fingers tracing the worn edges of the single photo I'd carried in my wallet for decades, a faded picture of my mother and father, smiling. A bet on red. I drifted back to those years. The warm springs and falls, the hot summers and cold winters, the love of a mom and dad, and the emptiness I felt when they were gone. I drifted, then bang. Claude's voice screamed out at me from the past. It was something he said to me long ago when I was down on my luck and up against the wall. He said, "Jack, if you're going to bet hard. And bet it all on red." Then I thought again about that femme fatale in dark glasses with a red purse. And I knew what my next move had to be. I had to find a girl who was playing a dangerous game. Rocco's game and the girl. The diner was a dead end, a graveyard of cold coffee and bad memories. But Bronson's words were still rattling around in my head like loose change in a tin can. Find a girl, a ghost with a name I didn't know. A dead end in the city. I worked the streets like a surgeon with a scalpel, peeling back the layers of the city's grim facade. The waitress at the diner gave me a blank stare and a shrug. The cashier just told me to beat it. The bums near the station traded my questions for a quarter and a lie. The city was a vast ocean of forgotten faces, and my little red-haired fish was lost in the currents. The blue note, defeated, with a hollow feeling in my gut that had nothing to do with hunger. I found myself in the blue note. It was a dive, a place where the smoke was thick enough to chew and the music was thick enough to drown in. I found a corner booth and ordered a whiskey, letting the sad wail of a saxophone wash over me. That's when I saw her. She was on stage, under a single yellow spotlight, a microphone in her hand. Her dress wasn't scarlet. It was a simple black number, but the voice was the same one I'd heard in the diner. A low, melodic hum that filled the room. The face was the same, too. This was her, the girl with the red purse. I watched her, a predator in the shadows. I waited through 3 sets and a dozen whiskeys until the place was nothing but a mess of empty tables and a bartender wiping down the counter. She came out from behind the stage, pushing the last straggler out the door with a tired smile. When she turned, our eyes met. Her smile vanished. "You've been looking for me," she said, her voice softer now, more human. "I have," I replied, my voice a gravelly whisper. "I need to know what you know." Rocco's warning. She looked me up and down, a flicker of fear and something else. Pity? In her eyes. "You're a fool," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "A big, stupid fool. I'm engaged to Rocco Racini. And you have no idea what that means." My blood ran cold. Rocco Racini, the grandson of the old man, Frank Vance, and I had put away a few decades ago. The past, as they say, has a long memory. "He's been watching you," she continued, her voice shaking. "He knows what you and Vance did to his grandfather. He's been waiting for you to get close to me. So you should be scared, real scared. Because Rocco isn't a man you play with. He's a man who plays you." She left me there, a solitary figure in the lonely night. The streetlights flickered, and I had a new target on my back. The case wasn't just a case anymore. It was a promise of pain, a debt coming due with interest. The whiskey didn't burn so good anymore. It just sat there, a cold reminder of the target on my back. Rocco Racini's name was a brand, a promise of pain. I could try to outrun it, or outshoot it, but that wasn't my style. Jack Hammer plays by the rules, even when the other side doesn't. And my rules said you face the music, but you don't do it alone. A debt to family. I ran through the names in my head, a mental Rolodex of faces I'd known in the shadows. Most of them were just that, shadows. But one name kept coming back, a name that tasted like cheap cigars and old grudges, Frank. My Uncle Frank. My father's brother. He was dirty, sure, but it was family dirt. The kind you don't scrub off. He was connected. Knew every rat and every cop in this city, and he'd built his own empire out of the scraps. I'd even worked a few cases for him back in the day, when my hands were cleaner and my heart was a little less scarred. He was a shark, and right now, I needed a bigger fish on my side. Back to the sewers. There was only one place to find him, Old Town. The rundown slum I grew up in. The kind of place the city planners forgot, and the honest folks left behind. The streets were narrower, the buildings older, and every brick held a memory. It was where I learned to fight, to run numbers, to survive. It was where Frank still held court, a king in his crumbling castle. The cab ride was a slow crawl through the city's underbelly. The neon faded, replaced by the dull glow of streetlights that seemed to be fighting a losing battle with the darkness. The air grew heavier, thick with the smell of stale beer and desperation. It was a long way from the polished glass towers where Rocco Racini made his deals. I stepped out onto the cracked pavement, the familiar chill of the old neighborhood seeping into my bones. Every shadow seemed to hold a story, every alley a whispered secret. This was Frank's territory, a place where the rules were written in blood, and loyalty was the only currency. I knew he wouldn't be happy to see me, not with the kind of trouble I was carrying, but I also knew he'd listen. Because family, even dirty family, still meant something in Old Town. I just hoped it meant enough to keep me alive. The cab dropped me off in front of a brownstone that had seen better days, probably before I was born. Old Town hadn't changed much, still smelled like stale beer and forgotten dreams. I walked up the cracked steps, feeling heavier with every creak of the wood. This was it. Frank's territory. A face from the past. He was in the living room, sitting in a worn armchair that looked as old as he did. The room was dim, filled with the ghosts of cigar smoke and a lifetime of shady deals. Frank was pushing 90, maybe, but if I had to guess, I'd put him in his hundreds. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, every line a story he'd probably never tell. His eyes, though, they were still sharp, like chips of flint in a pile of old ash. They saw too much, always had. He didn't say anything, just waved a gnarled hand toward the couch. I sat down, the springs groaning under my weight. The silence hung in the air, thick and heavy, like the dust motes dancing in the single shaft of light from the window. He was waiting, always waiting, the code of the street. Rocco Racini, I said, cutting to the chase. No need for pleasantries. Frank knew the name. Everyone in this city knew the name. It was a poison that ran deep. Frank just grunted, a low sound from the back of his throat. He lit a fresh cigar, the tip glowing like a warning light in the gloom. "That boy's got a long memory," he finally rasped, the words scratching like sandpaper. "And a long reach. He's got a hit on me," I told him. "A setup. A vendetta for his old man." Frank took a slow drag, the smoke curling around his ancient face. "Family business," he said. "Always comes back to blood and loyalty." He looked at me, those flint eyes seeing right through the years, right through the tough guy act. "You came to the right place. In this town, blood and loyalty are all you got when the chips are down." He didn't ask what I wanted. He didn't have to. He knew. And in that moment, sitting in that dusty room with the old man, I knew I wasn't alone. Not yet, anyway. The game was still on, and Frank was about to deal a new hand.